Welcome to Born Curious, the podcast from Harvard Radcliffe Institute, which brings you thought-provoking ideas and events. I'm your co-host, Ivelisse Estrada, flying solo this week as Heather Min explores Machu Picchu and the Amazon jungle. If you're a longtime follower of Harvard Radcliffe Institute, you know that on Radcliffe Day, our grandest event of the year, alumni, staff, fellows, and supporters gather as a community to honor an individual whose contributions to their field exemplify Radcliffe's guiding principles: excellence, inclusion, and social impact. This year, Dean Tamiko Brown-Nagin awarded the Radcliffe Medal to the actor and filmmaker Jodie Foster in celebration of her barrier-breaking career, which has contributed to important progress in an industry that has long been male-dominated, inspiring countless individuals in and beyond her field. As part of the award ceremony, Jodie Foster sat down for a conversation with her one-time mentor and fellow Yalie, Henry Louis Gates Jr., who is the Alphonse Fletcher University Professor and Director of the Hutchins Center for African and African American Research at Harvard University. As a side note, if you haven't yet listened to episode 409, we encourage you to also check out that panel discussion, which brought together film and television insiders to talk about representation, stereotypes, future opportunities, and more. In the meantime, we're happy to bring you Foster and Gates's conversation now.
Thank you.
Who in the world would ever have thought that you and I, two Yaleys, who met when you were an undergraduate, and I was a baby professor in New Haven back in 1983, 84, would one day be sitting here at Harvard.
Not covered in beer.
Yeah. To talk about your extraordinary and inspirational life and career. Let's start at your beginning. Brandy Foster. What was her story? And how did the opportunities that she did or didn't have as a woman of the preceding generation shape the kind of mother that she was to you and your siblings, do you think?
Yeah, I had an unusual upbringing. I'm the last of four children, quite a bit younger than the older three. And my mom was a single mom. By the time I was born, my father wasn't in the picture. I never met him. And my mom and I did everything together. We were sort of like a couple. The three older ones were from a different generation. They were from the 50s. They were born in the 50s. And by the time I was probably 10 years old, they were all gone from the house. I started acting at 3, supporting the family by the time I was about 6. My brother had been an actor as well. And my mom traveled with me wherever I was, and she was my manager and the person who took care of me when I was on set. She guided my career. So in some ways, she chose every television show that I took, every movie. So in some ways, my career choices were about her vicarious need to make herself matter. She recognized that in some ways. I recognized that. And I think the thing that she wanted for me more than anything, because of her generation and her status in that generation, pre-feminist woman, she wanted me to be respected above anything else. And so she engineered, in some ways, propelled me in a career where she could feel respected because her daughter was respected. That was a big burden, a big responsibility. And yet I knew that it was, done out of love. She taught me how to choose my own material. She wanted more than anything for me to be very well educated. And as she said to me, by the time you're 18, your career will be over and you won't be an actor anymore. So what do you want to be when you grow up? A doctor? A lawyer? Once I did hit 18, and I did have some fallow years, but after that she said, actually, your career is definitely going to be over by 40. So make as much money doing this, but a PhD, you'd be really well suited for a PhD. So she wanted all the things for me that she could never achieve, and I think that was mostly her motivation.
As when you have two boys,
Yes.
my two nephews.
One's over there.
Charlie's right there, another Yaley.
That's right.
When you gave birth, and as the boys grew up, did your understanding of your mother and your understanding change and your relationship change?
Yeah, I mean, my relationship with my mom was very complicated, and I'm pretty sure that as soon as I had children, I said I want to do it completely the opposite way from the way I was raised. But you know, our mothers inhabit us, all of us, men and women, and her choices in life influenced my choices in life, influenced what I did and what I didn't do, and I especially appreciated her more as I got older and recognized what an extraordinary mother she was, not just for enduring me in my adolescent years, but also for understanding that there was only so far she could have gone and that it was up to the next generation to take the fight further. It didn't mean that she wasn't conflicted and full of mixed messages. She was, but she wanted me to be less messed up than her. And I think that's what I hope for my sons. You know, Little Man Tate, my first movie that I directed, is about, in some ways, two women raising a new generation of men, a new prodigy. And what you hope is that this new generation of men who are informed by women will in some ways be able to heal the wounds of the past and create a new generation of men that can soar beyond their lack of capabilities.
Yeah, well, let's hope so too, because a lot of work needs to be done on that front. So, let's start with what's considered. Let's start professionally by what's considered by most critics your breakout role.
Okay.
Iris, teenage sex worker and taxi driver. 1976. You were 12 years old.
Yep.
What did your mother think about you playing that role?
Oh.
Tell us about that conversation. Was it a difficult decision? Did you think you'd be typecast? Did anybody think that your career would be over?
Yeah, well, we're going to go back to my mom again. I had already been working for quite a while. I'd made a lot of movies. I'd made more movies than Scorsese at that point, or Robert De Niro.
Whoa.
But my mom was self-taught. You know, she did graduate high school, but she didn't go to college, and she read books. She devoured books on history and loved foreign films. And every day from school, she would take me to a foreign film. She wanted me to speak other languages, and she wasn't able to, so she plopped me in usually French, but foreign films, Italian, German films, so that I would hear other languages and get interested in that. So she'd seen every Scorsese movie, and honestly, I'd already done Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore with him. She thought that he was the great genius of our generation, and so she couldn't have been more thrilled. A lot of people at the time, I think, I don't know if they questioned her, but certainly the culture was questioning the idea that a young person would be subjected to subjects like this. And in fact, the Board of Education wanted to stop me from making the movie. So I had to prove in front of a judge, basically, that I was competent enough to understand that I was not a prostitute. And so they put me in front of with a psychologist and, you know, asked me a bunch of questions. And I guess that was how I was able to do Taxi Driver.
Well, how did that demand come about?
I don't know. I think it was, it was at a time where A Pretty Baby had just come out with Brooke Shields, and I think people were questioning whether it was a smart idea to have young women especially dealing with adult topics.
Well, I'm curious to hear about what you learned about acting from the stories passed down and what you were able to observe by working with the elders, like De Niro and Scorsese.
Well, you know, I as I said, I didn't really think I wanted to be an actor when I grew up because it seemed kind of like a dumb job. It seemed that all you did was learn lines, and then say the lines. And then a director would say to you, act like yourself. And I thought, well, that is not a career. That's not going to be enough for me. At 12, when I did Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro took me aside. He did improvisations with me. He worked with me. And I suddenly understood, my 12-year-old mind was blown, and I suddenly understood that acting was more than just saying lines and being yourself. And I recognized, and I was very hard on myself, I recognized that it was my fault because I hadn't given it enough of myself, that I hadn't looked at it the way I might look at a book or the way I might look at a painting, that I hadn't really looked at it as an art form. And that it was up to me to challenge myself to go beyond. That was me at 12, really.
Wow.
And, kind of, whipping myself and saying, like, what's the matter with you? Why didn't you take this seriously when you were 10? And so that movie really changed my life. Really was a moment where I said, maybe acting could be challenging enough for me to do as a grown-up person.
Huh. Wow, that's a great story. Did you tell them that? Did you tell them what a shaping influence that experience was?
Yeah, I have seen them over the years, and I'm always so grateful. I always make sure that I thank them for, just modeling what artistry could be. Scorsese especially, I'm sure all of you have a vision of who Martin Scorsese is. And at the time, he was, he's a little guy. He had a little twirly mustache, and that he twirled constantly, and he never stopped cackling. He was so funny. And he would sit behind the camera, right in front of the camera. We didn't have video monitors then like we do now. He would sit in front of the camera. He would look at us and do 50 takes, 25 takes, huge amounts of takes. And every single time he would have to stop himself from laughing. He would put his hand over his mouth and stop himself from laughing because he was so interested in what the actors were doing. It was like he was inside their body. Uh-huh. And I'll never forget, and I hope that I bring that to the work that I do as a director.
Yeah, but wasn't that unsettling to have somebody bust out laughing at your take?
In the old days, you learned that, right? We didn't have video monitors, and we were used to having people stare at us while we were having an intimate moment with somebody next to us. So the ability to be able to be in the moment and outside the moment watching at the same time.
One of the things for which I think that you're most deeply respected is your educational pedigree.
Yeah.
Lycée Français.
I knew he was going to ask that question.
The Lycée Français, and then Mother Yale. What did your experience as a student and as a fluent French speaker awaken you to in terms of life, in terms of ideas, in terms of possibilities? I often worry about actors who didn't go to college, and especially about athletes who don't go to college.
Yeah.
So talk about the role of both of those.
Well, I don't know that I worry about it. I think recently I really come to understand that what college is how you spend those 4 years. Undergraduate is how you spend the years between 17 and 22. Where were you? What were you doing? Who were you talking to? What were you learning? It seems like the most fecund time in my life, and I'm so grateful that I was surrounded by a bunch of idiots that loved me, put their arms around me, and we talked until the wee hours about everything. Because I didn't grow up that way, and I grew up in Los Angeles, and we didn't talk. We played volleyball, or if something was really going wrong, we might play Scrabble. But there was not a lot of talking about things. There wasn't analysis. There wasn't an interest in going deeper because it just wasn't part of our culture. I'm sure it was there. There was a desire for it, but it just wasn't a part of it. So for me, the revelation of going to college was being surrounded by brilliant people who were at the beginning of their life that had all of the excitement of what knowledge could be. And learning from them, actually, I hate to say this, and I really hope you're not insulted, but I don't remember anything I learned in undergraduate. Not one thing. But I'll never forget being surrounded by those people and being surrounded by those professors as well, and being surrounded by, that's how I grew up and beyond who I was as a Los Angeles kid.
And you went through a profound trauma as an undergraduate at Yale.
I did.
Would you mind talking to us about that and how you got through it.
You know, and for obvious reasons, I've chosen over the years never to really speak publicly about it. It really more as a strategy to have a career that was more than just being a historical anecdote. So when I was 18, some of you don't know this. When I was 18, I was at Yale freshman year. A deranged man was obsessed with me. He bought a lot of guns, traveled across the country, impersonating friends of mine, and then finally found himself at Yale, where I guess he telephoned me and had some correspondence towards me, and then went and shot the president, who was Ronald Reagan at the time, and some people in his entourage as well, some gravely.
Yeah.
That was a big upset in my life, as you can imagine, not as much as in the lives of some of the people who were shot, of course. But it definitely turned my world upside down. I was a freshman, and I was in the middle of doing a play, and decided that the show must go on. So I also decided to go back on stage, even though I was in hiding. I couldn't live in my room. I couldn't go to classes. I had bodyguards 24/7. So yeah, I don't usually talk about that time because it was a tumultuous time, and I wanted to be. And here's where my mom came in as well. I wanted to have a long career where I was known for myself and for my work.
Yes.
And I wanted my identity to be about what I produced. I just didn't want to be that girl who was chosen abstractly by an insane man to be a footnote in history.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But what I remember is that the entire community, I don't know if you felt this or were aware of it, but those of us on the faculty, that your fellows embraced you.
Yeah.
They did their best to support you. And I think that was Yale's finest moment as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, it really was. And, you know, Bart Giamatti, too. Love him. And it was trial by fire. I became an adult really quickly. And I learned some good lessons and some bad lessons. I think the good lessons were you do have a community, which I didn't really understand. The bad lessons, obviously, is, you know, now you can trust no one. But also, and another good lesson was that I looked at the kind of career that I wanted to have, and I really understood that I did not want to be famous, that I did not want to be a celebrity. And I needed to design a career in acting that was more than just being famous, that it was only worth it if I could do meaningful work. And so I really took a hard tack if I was going to continue in the film world, that I wanted to make sure that my work stood for me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And, well, then how did you manage to do that and raise a family and two boys who are lovely and normal? More or less, Charlie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are a lot of protections, a lot of survival tools that go into creating a whole person that can withstand and who has the, what's that word that starts with an R that people have used twice? Resilience.
Uh-huh.
And some of those survival tools are difficult to maintain and are, you know, they might not look good to everybody else, but I had to keep myself safe. So sometimes I say that I felt when I was younger that I got a straw that I built, and I was floating underwater, but I had a straw that I could breathe. You design straws that allow you to survive intact, and some of that was really to understand what privacy means.
Uh-huh.
So the kids were raised in a really private way. Charlie, for whatever reason, Charlie, were you dumb? Yes. He did not know that I was an actor until he was about, I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8. I once took into a movie set, and they were constructing something, and I thought it would be fun to give him a little tool belt. So I gave him a little plastic tool belt, and he walked around. Actually, you were even littler. I think you were 4 or 5. He walked around with a tool belt, and from then on, he thought I was a construction worker. And I remember the day when he was 6 or 7, and I said something about, and he said, "But wait, don't you make buildings?" And I said, "No, I don't make buildings." "Why do you think I make buildings?" He goes, "But you gave me the tool belt."
Well, you make worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah, you make worlds. We met because of a mutual love of literature.
Yes.
And you wrote your senior essay, as Tomiko said, on Toni Morrison. So first of all, why African American studies? A nice white group.
I'm so happy that you're asking me that question. And it's really important for this audience to hear. Back in 1983, 82, whenever it was, people would say, "I don't understand African American studies. Why would you study Afro-American literature? Why would you study African literature?" I remember walking on the street when I told my mom that that's what I had decided that I was going to major in. And as forward-thinking as my mom was, she was so mad at me. She said, "I sent you to this fancy school. You got all A's, and you're going to study African-American literature?" It was difficult at that time to have her understand what I understood. And so the answer that I give when people ask me that question is, because I'm a well-educated person.
Oh, my girl, that's what I'm talking about.
Because I want to be a part of the canon of American literature. Because I am interested in literature that is as emotionally important as it is intellectually. And that is when you think of American literature, when you think of, is there one genre or type of American literature? We don't really have one, except for maybe the Harlem Renaissance, or potentially African American literature. So for me, it's the shining light of literature, and yeah.
Amen to that. So here's the story. Toni Morrison and I met. Before she was Toni Morrison, Charles Davis hired her to teach at Yale, and our offices were adjacent. I was 26. I was still at graduate school at Cambridge, deciding whether I could ever finish a PhD or I should go to law school. And she would drive herself up from the city. She was working as an editor. And Toni could be mean. I mean, she did not suffer fools at all. So a few years later, here you come, and you want to write about Toni Morrison. And I thought it would be a great thing, a great boon, a great additional, it would give you additional insight if you sat with her. But she wasn't granting interviews. So I did not tell her who you were. I wrote to her and said I had a student whose name was Alicia.
That's right.
I did not say Jodie Foster. There was no internet. She couldn't. And I described you, and she said, "Game."
Yep.
And you went down to her home. Take it from there.
Greatest moment of my life. Greatest moment of my life. Meeting somebody that was really my creative hero, and who I spent all this time now studying her work, and the work resonated so much with me, connected so much with me. And I don't know, maybe you have all had this experience more than once. I feel like I've only had it a handful of times in my life, where you meet with somebody and you do come with some preconceived ideas about their work, and within the first 10 minutes, they one by one take all of your ideas and they confirm each one of them.
Wow.
And it was just thrilling. It was just a thrilling experience. A great afternoon that I got to spend with her. I got to go out to her jetty. She had a little jetty that she went out on the pier, and she'd sit at the end on a kind of like a little bench and look out at the Hudson. And I got to do that. That's really one of the highlights of my life.
Yes, our house in South Nyack.
That's right.
You could see the Tappan Zee Bridge.
That's right.
And you interviewed her, and you taped it.
Yep.
It is the best interview Toni Morrison ever got. And it drives me nuts that even after Toni Morrison is dead, she won't publish it.
Yeah. Well, Uncle Skip, he's always bringing this one up. Yeah, I never thought I would be an actor. Okay, I have to be honest. Yes, my mom said, you won't be an actor after 18. Then she said, you won't be an actor after 40. I just didn't think I had the personality. I thought it was a family business that I fell into. And the truth is I really don't have that personality. My mind doesn't work that way. It's not in my DNA. I wasn't born that way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a cruel job to have given a child like me. I'm not a box of tears. It's not easy for me to live with my emotions on the outside of my body. It doesn't happen. Things get branded through my brain first. If there was a design for me, it was to be a writer because that's how my mind worked. But there's something about film that allows you to see the big picture and be able to identify the intellectual process of what a film can do, then create seams of emotional understanding, and then the best part, erasing those seams so that those two things become an organic entity that you present lovingly after years and years of work. You present to an audience and say, here is an organic being that is just going to walk and talk the way they do. And that audience has a response and has a relationship to this being that you've created that is no longer part of your body, that walks the way it walks. And, that's really the gift and the blessing of being a filmmaker. But it's also what is the blessing of being somebody that is a strong intellectual person that has been forced to become an emotional person. To combine those two things, it's a balancing job that you hope that people do in their lives. But as an artist, if you can't do that, you will sink to the bottom of the ocean.
What do you think that your education gave you that a career in film itself wouldn't have?
Well, I always say to people, when I went to Yale, I learned how to read. Which doesn't sound very good. But that really is it. That's all we're learning. We're learning how to read. It doesn't matter whether you're a scientist or whether you're a dancer or whether you're a literature major. The idea is to see something and experience it and go deeper than the surface. And the deeper you go, the more understanding you have and the more of yourself that you bring to that process. So that's where I learned to read. And however, may I just say, in defense of the people that don't have a college education, that don't have the opportunity, or that don't get to spend those 4 years here, because college education isn't meant for everybody. It really is about where you are between the ages of 17 and 22.
Yeah.
And, I had the blessing to be able to find myself in New Haven surrounded by these amazing people, but I have friends who, headed off to South America and lived in villages and learned more than I ever could. And it really doesn't matter which institution of life that you find yourself in. It really is about self-discovery and how yourself relates to community. And whether you find that at Harvard or at Yale or in the backwoods or wherever, it really is about those 4 years.
As long as you're a learner.
Yeah, as long as you're open to change,
to
changing yourself. As my friends always say, we are transforming all the time. That's our job as humans. And wherever you are is about what transformation you take, what step you take deeper towards yourself.
Your career spanned decades. It's also spanned so many aspects of the industry. I mean, acting, directing, writing, producing. Jodie, when you first started on this journey, how far could a brilliant young woman like yourself expect to go in the industry?
Not very far. They quoted me before when I was growing up. I never saw another woman. Sometimes the lady who played my mom, or sometimes the makeup artist, but usually not. Most of the makeup artists were men. And sometimes a script supervisor, because that was a very difficult didactic task that most men can't do. But I was surrounded by brothers and fathers, and I didn't have a father. And so for me, it really was these groups of men who taught me how lenses worked, and they taught me, why an edit works or why it doesn't work, or they taught me how to whittle wood. Or a technician once, when I was just really having a hard time on a movie, he taught me to throw the I Ching. These brothers and fathers raised me, and so when I came into the industry, when I came into, I forget what the person who was on the panel called it, maybe the institution. I was all in. These were my brothers and fathers. And I was their prodigal daughter, and they gave me opportunities that they did not give other women, because they knew me, and they worked with me, and they knew that when they said, be here at 7:45, I was there at 7:45. And they knew that when we entered into a conversation or a handshake, and they said, can we accomplish this together? I said, you have my word, and I did those things. And it's why, by a miracle, I was not considered a risk as a director. Most women are seen as a risk to our community, and it's why there are very few women directors, why there are very few women directors of color, certainly, people of color, is that psychologically, the white male experience sees others as risks. And for whatever reason, because I had been a part of that institution, I was a risk worth taking. So I can't help but be grateful to them, because I don't believe, and I don't think any of us believe, that it's some plot that the white men that were it certainly can't be, because all of the white women who took their spots did exactly the same thing. The implicit bias that came from their mentors translated to them, and they hired no women either for many, 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 many years. So it is a psychological moment where it's difficult to give that first opportunity to a female director, to a black director, when he or she doesn't look like you.
Well, how does one get over that?
They get an education, and it's our responsibility, when you do finally make your way into the institution, to learn how to, I'm so sorry that we have to do this, to learn how to teach people with love and compassion, to say, it's not your fault that you don't understand this, but let me explain this to you in a way, because we're all in the same boat. We have to teach them.
How is Are there ways in which being a woman has helped your career, and simultaneously ways in which being a woman has delimited your career?
Oh yeah, I think there are ways that it really has helped my career, because a lifetime of very small microaggressions and having to bend myself as a pretzel in order to accommodate into spaces where normally I wouldn't be welcome, has allowed me to be a kind of leader. Once I became a leader, a kind of leader that can really take 175 people on a crew and say, we're in this together. We're a group. And yes, in the hierarchy, I'm your leader, but I want to hear from you. I want you to tell me what your parents taught you when you were a kid, or what adventures you had. And I'm going to give you credit when that happens, because I was raised differently. So that really is an advantage, I think, on film sets, when you have the experience of having been othered, to be able to bring people together in a cohesive environment that allows community spirit to inform the movie. Especially when you're making ensemble movies, personal films, I want the personal experiences of the people that I'm working with. I want to take them and then give them credit, but bring them to the movie. And that hasn't traditionally been taught. That's been taught to women, but that hasn't traditionally been taught to men. Where it hurt me, sadly, I have a leadership style that sometimes is neither male nor female traditionally, and sometimes it's hard for executives and producers to recognize. So, for example, I'm working on a film as a director, and somebody wants me to do it their way. which is normal. There's always a lot of people that want you to do it their way. And if I say, actually, I disagree with that, and I don't think that's the path that I'm going to go, they're very confused as to what's the next step to get their way. And sometimes the next step is, well, you're a woman, so I'm going to make you cry, and then you're going to do it my way. And that doesn't work with me. And maybe it would be better if it did. Maybe we would have maybe some things would work better if they did. Or the bullying tactic of, wow, she really still won't make it work. She really still won't do what I said. So let me try really, really making it terribly uncomfortable for her. Huh. And that still doesn't work. Because, and partly because of my education, I work in the middle area where, who was it that said that? That they wanted to, it was Mira, who said, yes, that's where you said that you wanted everybody to do what you wanted to hire somebody who was willing to do what you said, and you wanted to make sure, you say it, what is it? What is it? Tell me.
I said that I'm a good team player so long as I have the last word.
Exactly. Good team player as long as I have the last word. Yes.
Diana introduced
Yes.
the subject I was going to raise, your sexuality. How has, first of all, I think you came out in 2013?
No.
No?
No.
When did you come out?
Well, I don't know. We should put this to the audience of what is coming out. What is coming out? I mean, for most people, that means talking to their parents, talking to the people they love, means talking to the people at work, and living their life in an authentic way. But apparently in Hollywood, that's not true.
Right, yeah.
So, I don't know. I think I have a different understanding of what that means. But a lot of people would say that the first time that it was talked about publicly, not by me, by the way,
Right.
would have been 2013.
Were you could give it up for that. But were you worried about, how did you negotiate that? How did you negotiate your fears or concerns about your career and this intimate aspect of yourself becoming public?
It's hard. It's hard because I'm 62 years old, almost 63 years old, and it's hard in a room full of people that might be in their 30s or 40s or younger. It's hard to give people a real understanding of what things used to be like.
Uh-huh.
What was it like? So, and I'm sure you've had that same thing. What was it like growing up in West Virginia in the 70s?
Sure. And
it's really difficult to tell people that are 20 years old, well, I acted this way or I said this because that's what it was like in those years.
Right.
It's hard to bring the past to bear to people that haven't lived through that. My number one concern, as I said to you, was surviving intact, emotionally and intellectually. What I didn't want to do was end up dead in a hotel room with a needle in my arm.
Yeah.
And part of that meant that for me to survive intact, that I needed a kind of emotional safety and privacy that was unusual for the film business. I don't know that I would survive the film business now if I was the new young actors. I don't know that I would have continued. I think I would have quit. I don't think I would have survived it intact. But in those days, the way to survive that was to say, I am off limits. You can't have me. You can have all this part that I give you. You can have my art. You can have my honesty. You can have, I will enter into trust with you at work. I will be a professional. You can count on me, but you can't have all of me. So that was off limits. And that's hard to explain why that was necessary to people that are younger. But that was necessary for me to survive.
Well, I understand that, but why has it changed? Why would that be impossible for a person to do now?
Well, it should be. And it's possible for people to make that choice because of the pioneers that came before me.
Right.
because of the pioneers that that were pelted with tomatoes, for lack of a better analogy, for the people who made it possible for me to be sitting here. Certainly for lesbians and gays who came before me, it is possible for me to stand here and for me to have stood at 35 years old and said, my life is off limits and you can't have it. And it's something that I have to handle with, what I have to deal with my sons, of trying to explain to them what life used to be like when you did not see interracial couple walking down the street hand in hand.
Oh, yeah.
That was not possible.
Oh, my God. I have this built-in reaction that when I look out the window and see, particularly a black man and a white woman, I want to roll the window down. Brother, don't do that. You do that in private, but you can't do that in public.
Right.
No, I
like
really
we
do.
say to our children. I mean, when I look at my kids' life, I don't want to bring fear to their life the way my mom did to me. I don't want to bring fear to their life, but you want them to live. You don't want them to be hurt.
Right.
So, anyways, I lay that out to you to say, I'm a 62-year-old woman and I grew up in a different time. And I'm so proud and so encouraged by the transformation that our cultures have made, and by some tiny part that I hopefully have brought to the equation to help that. I wish I could have done more, and but I only could do as much as I could do.
Oh, you've done
And
that.
now it's up to you guys.
That's great. You've opened so many doors, it's fair to say, for many who came after you. Has your perspective changed on the industry with almost 60 years of experience in front of the camera?
Oh, gosh, yes. Oh, it's so much better now. I think, and I'm sure every profession feels this way. You try so hard when you're young, especially in an art form. You really do understand that the biggest problem that I had, not problem, but I think the biggest obstacle that I had to overcome was being anxious and self-conscious and not being confident. So now at 60, I feel like I'm having more fun making movies as an actor than I ever did, because I finally reached an age, and it might be hormonal, where I really don't care. And I have faith and confidence that if I learn my lines and I know my character, chances are, and even if I don't have a plan as to what I'm doing, I always have a plan, but even if for whatever reason I can't find a plan, chances are I will figure it out on the day. And the ease and the comfort of knowing that you don't have to kill yourself in order to find honesty and authenticity, and that the real work is the work of living, and that's what you bring to the table. When I walk onto a set with young people that are 22 or 23, my great contribution of wisdom is to just look over there and take their hand and go, don't worry so much. It'll be fine. And that sounds kind of silly, but that Zen mastery is really having confidence enough in your soul and your ability to connect to the truth, the part that's conscious and the part that's unconscious, that you don't need to, put on a funny red nose and twirl around 400 times and, I don't know what other things method actors might do in order to get the thrills. But there's a whole level of anxiety that you don't have to entertain anymore.
I want to close by, first of all, wishing you an early Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
My friend. And I want to ask you a couple more big questions. As a filmmaker, as a mother, as a supporter of just causes, what are your hopes for the present moment? What are your fears for the present moment?
Oh, God. Who knew that question was going to be the toughest question ever asked? I think I wouldn't have thought that 10 years ago. The hardest thing now is being tired. I think a lot of us are tired and worn out and sad. And that is really hard. And what I hope is with this new generation, we can find the kind of energy to fight and to continue the fight that people have been fighting for generations, to just be energized. I think that's what we need, is a kind of energy. And what I hope for people now is that they take the gloves off. At Harvard has shown that recently, and
Right on.
but also with this group of thinkers in these rarefied places where the intellect and the ability to connect is really revered above all else, to really understand that you have the power to use love as a guiding principle and to be strategic. And when somebody says to me, I'm exhausted because I've been playing whack-a-mole all day with 1,000 different things that are wrong, I say, stop it, choose one. Save yourself, make sure you take your Wheaties and your vitamins, and then choose one. And if we all choose one and dedicate ourselves 100% to it, then hopefully we won't be whacked by everything that's coming at us.
We could go on. We could go on forever, and I wish that we could. But ladies and gentlemen, now you know why she was the most brilliant student I have ever taught. Please join me in warmly thanking Jodie Foster for her transformational and inspirational work.
That concludes today's program.
Born Curious is brought to you by Harvard Radcliffe Institute. Our producer is Alan Grazioso. Kevin Grady, Anna Song, Productions, Inc.
And Cabin 3 Media provided editing and production support.
Many thanks to Jane Huber for editorial support.
And we are your co-hosts. I'm Heather Min.
And I'm Evilise Estrada.
Our website where you can listen to all our episodes is radcliffe.harvard.edu/borncurious. If you have feedback, you can email us at info@radcliffe.harvard.edu.
You can follow Harvard Radcliffe Institute on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Threads. And as always, you can find Born Curious wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for learning with us.
And join us next time.